Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Your Excellency, distinguished participants, Chairman and members of the Board of Governors and members of Karachi Council on Foreign Relations, I am Commodore Retired Sadeed Anwar Malik. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Secretary General of Karachi Council on Foreign Relations. As everybody is well introduced to KCFR, I may skip the basic thing of introduction. Today's moderator will be Mr. Kalim Farooqui, who is a senior and a businessman from Karachi. He is senior member of Karachi Council on Foreign Relations. He heads Pakistan-Japan Business Council and a number of Chamber of Commerce of Karachi, Lahore, Sialkot, some American, Belgium, Luxembourg Chamber of Commerces. He's basically an engineer and member of the Karachi Council on engineering too, and he's a leading businessman of Karachi. May I request Mr. Kalim Farooqui to moderate today's webinar.
Thank you, Malik Saab. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum and very good morning. Excellency, nice to see you. We were a little scared whether you will be able to meet us because of what is happening where our Prime Minister has just arrived last night. And but considering the fact that some may be glued to the TV to see what is happening, there are 35 participants. Thank you very much, madam. Let me introduce the background of Her Excellency Wendy Gilmour. Wendy Gilmour joined the Canadian Foreign Service in 1990 with postings in Zimbabwe and with cross accreditation at that time to Mozambique, Botswana, and Angola. Also United Kingdom and Nigeria. She served in international peace operations in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Office of the High Representative, and Kosovo as political advisor to the Commander NATO Kovo Forces in 1990s, and with the Canadian Armed Forces as a political advisor to the Canadian Commander Joint Task Force Southwest Asia. That means she's very well acquainted with Pakistan. In the headquarters, the High Commissioner served as Deputy Director in the Eastern Europe and Regional Security and Peacekeeping Divisions, and as a Director, Peace Operations and Director of the Sudan Task Force. She was also posted to Colorado Springs as the political advisor to Commander North American Aerospace Defense Command in 2008 and stayed there till 2010. On return to Ottawa, she joined the Department of Public Safety as Senior Departmental Assistant to the Minister. Her Excellency moved to National Defense in 2011 to become the Director General International and Industry Programs in the in the Material Group, after which she rejoined the Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development in 2015, became Director General, Trade and Export Controls. Her Excellency holds a Bachelor of Arts Honors in Political Studies and History from Queen's University at Kingston and served in the Canadian Forces Primary Reserve as a Logistic Officer. A very vast background, madam, and it will be a pleasure listening to you. And as you can see, the Karachi Council on Foreign Relations is basically comprises of group of individuals from a different variety of sector. So may I request you, madam, to say what you have to, and then we'll have a question and answer session later. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much for the invitation to be with you this morning. And in particular, the Karachi Council on Foreign Relations. It's a very important group. You have many esteemed members in your ranks. I as I say, looking through the video, I see generals and ambassadors, as well as I see Samir Dasal online, the Canada-Pakistan Business Council, which is a very important forum for us. And just bear with me for a moment. My screen just turned, so all I can see is myself. I would much rather see the rest of you. Oh, that's much better. And I'm just so pleased to be with you here this morning. It's also, respect, 2 years into the pandemic, we're still on video calls, but it does mean that I can reach out in a very timely way to all of you down south in the country, it also means that with great pleasure I can see many of your faces, which is not always the case when we're together and hidden under masks. So truly a pleasure to be here with you this morning. It was interesting sort of listening to a bit of the recitation of my career. I was thinking this morning and speaking to some of my colleagues in Canadian missions around the world that I started my career just as the Cold War was ending, and we were thinking that we were heading into a period, it was the end of history. We were going to have a positive, productive relationships amongst all of the major powers of the world in order to address the most pressing and challenging problems of our time. And through the 90s, through the 2000s, the 2010s, we've learned that this is not the end of history, that there still are many pressing challenges, but that they are best addressed when we're able to speak to one another and work together without armed conflict handing sort of over our heads. Pakistan knows that better than anyone. I do understand, and I am often reminded that Pakistan is one of the countries that has been impacted the most significantly by armed conflict on your borders, by an insurgency in the last sort of 10 to 15 years within your borders. You know what it is to experience conflict and to have to adapt to it. Our compatriots and friends in Ukraine right at the moment are facing an armed invasion from a neighbor, which is not making any pretense of hiding that they are jeopardizing or impacting the territorial integrity of that country. For Canada, this is a significant and disturbing development. Prime Minister Trudeau has come out this morning, I guess our morning, their evening, with a statement condemning this act and working together with our international partners to counter it. I won't speak or not to the thinking behind Prime Minister Khan's decision to travel at this particular time, but I do know that Pakistan values principles of territorial integrity and sovereignty, and I would hope that those principles be made very clear during this visit. But turning to Pakistan, Canada, and of course, we can't ignore the fact that we are living in world events, and that world events impact all of our relationships. But I think, I always start off, and I believe many of you have probably heard me speak before in fora in Karachi and elsewhere about the long-standing and deep engagement that Canada and Pakistan have, which really starts and is very much based on the degree of people-to-people contacts. We are so lucky in Canada to have a vibrant and successful Canadian-Pakistani diaspora that stems back in different waves of immigration over decades. We're so very lucky that we have an active and vibrant Canadian diaspora here in Pakistan, many of whom share ties to both countries. These are ties that we can really build on. We also have, as Canada, decades of engagement with Pakistan in support of Pakistan's development, from infrastructure development in dams and hydropower 30 years ago, to our ongoing and deep engagement with many civil society organizations in support, primarily of women's empowerment, health, and education now. Canada remains really an active partner to Pakistan also in humanitarian aspects. We work with the United Nations organizations and, of course, the Pakistan government to address real needs in this country, and also to cooperate in the delivery of humanitarian assistance to the Afghan people. And over the course of my tenure here, which is now 3 and a bit years, we have worked with Pakistan in support of what we had hoped would be a viable peace process in Afghanistan. We're now encouraging Pakistan and many other countries with Canada remain very concerned by events in Afghanistan, and hoping that the interim administration led by the Taliban will be prepared to demonstrate that they are acting in the interests of the Afghan people and presenting an inclusive government that also responds and values the contribution by 50% of the country, which is women, and allows education, access to work, and those elements that are needed for women to be able to pursue their lives in a productive manner. These are all issues and concerns that Canada shares and discusses with Pakistan regularly. But we spend much of our time here at the Canadian High Commission really trying to engage and work with the peoples of Pakistan and develop the relationships with new and upcoming generations of leaders. I was so incredibly fortunate to spend much of the last month and a half, I guess, in 3 different visits up in the north of Pakistan and in the Northern Territories, Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, where we were working with local communities who had themselves decided to organize and promote winter sports, winter activities, attention to climate change. Canada is so very aware and concerned that, with the impact that human-driven climate change is having on our globe. And Pakistan, of course, is one of the top 5 countries impacted by climate change. And so getting an opportunity to see and to engage with Northern peoples and to get outside and play games with them, but also have a conversation about the fact that the northern regions of Pakistan, like the northern regions in Canada, are warming at 2 times the rest of the world. And that requires adaptation. It requires a degree of resilience that is always so present in communities in environmentally fragile areas, but it also requires the rest of us to do what we can to try and address it, to assist these communities, but also to try and work together to curtail the impact of global warming to the best we can. Which also makes me think about the emissions that are going to be created by large-scale military movements in Eastern Europe, but we'll leave that one aside for the moment. We also, and I know this is something that's very close to Samir's heart, and also the rest of us that are engaged in business and investment ties between Canada and Pakistan. But the last couple of years have been very challenging globally for the global economy, as well as, of course, for health. And we've seen sort of stagnant growth in trade and investment relations, which is really sort of directly related to curtailing international travel, to the disruption in global supply chains. But I am hopeful and frankly quite optimistic that this will improve in the year to come and beyond. Canada and Pakistan have a very traditional trading relationship. We have about over $1 billion in 2-way trade, primarily in commodities, agriculture, softwood lumber and logs, in leather goods going in the Canadian direction, scrap metal coming from Canada to Pakistan. But increasingly what we're seeing is the development of trade in services. And really that's where the future of, I think, our trading relationship lies. Canada and Pakistan entrepreneurs and business people working together in information communications and technology, which is one area of tremendous growth. We've seen some very successful Canadian companies enter into the Pakistan market to take advantage of English-speaking, educated software engineers and other specialists that can contribute directly to the global growth of these companies. We also see tremendous potential in renewable energy and clean technologies, which is an area of value added, certainly competitive advantage for Canada. And in working with Pakistan, again, linking back to the need to address climate change, we have some just tremendous investment in wind power, beginning sort of burgeoning investment in solar. This has been challenged here in Pakistan by the difficulties around the independent power producers and the negotiated agreements that governments have made, and frankly, living up to the contractual commitments made with these power producers. But I know that our Canadian companies have been working as creatively as they possibly have been able to with authorities in the Pakistan government to try and figure out a way ahead so that Pakistan can take advantage of clean sources of power. We are quite excited by the prospect of developments in the extractive sector and declared willingness on the part of the government of Pakistan to look at addressing some of the historical challenges in the extractive sector. The Reko Deep mine in particular, it looks like that there is possibility that could be moving ahead, which for Canada, because we are a world leader in the extractive sector, both in mining, also exploration in mining services sector, the resolution of this particular investment will open the doors, I think, to a lot more interest on the part of companies from Canada and frankly, global companies that are interested in engaging in this sector. I'm going to, I always find that I enjoy the question and answers a lot more than, frankly, listening to my own voice in my head. So I will stop there and just, and hope that we can have, I'm happy to answer questions and frankly have an interactive dialogue. But just to say that we really do value our relationship with Pakistan, the Pakistani people, and the potential for this relationship in a country that is, plays such a pivotal role in so many different areas, and in particular in the South Asian region. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam High Commissioner. While you were talking, I was reminiscing of the days when I was visiting Canada in the early stages at 1972. That was the time I traveled across of Canada. And as a matter of fact, I had the privilege of attending the 1976 Olympics. My own son, he preferred to go to York University, while I was insisting, I have been educated in state, why don't you go to the university that I went to? So he preferred Canada. Nice to hear you, madam. A good coverage of what, the relations between Pakistan and Canada exist. There's a lot that can be done. There is a large diaspora, as you said. I will now leave, to our members to ask you questions. There'll be many to be asked, but the way we go about doing it is we prefer the members asking the questions. And if we have the time, then we'll let the others also ask. And to the people asking the question, I would request you to kindly limit your question to a question itself. Thank you.
There's a question from the chairman of the Sindh Board of Technical Education, Dr. Masroo, and I will read out his question. We could provide support to Afghanistan in developing and strengthening of technical vocational education and training, TVT. And this can be coordinated between Pakistan, Canada, and Afghanistan.
I'm happy to respond individually or take groups of questions as you see fit. But certainly, I think we see potential in the cooperation with Pakistan in support of the people of Afghanistan. There's no question. Humanitarian support is moving right at the moment. There is tremendous need, extraordinary need in education and health in particular. Canada is constrained at the moment from engaging with the interim administration because the Taliban are still a listed terrorist entity under Canadian law. And so our support must go directly to the Afghan people and not through administrative entities. I am hopeful that should the Taliban demonstrate that they are interested in working with the international community in addressing some of the more egregious members that they have that were engaged in the conflict in ways that were attacks on civilian and truly egregious and other terrorist related acts, that perhaps we can find a way forward. But for the moment, we are very constrained in operating in an official capacity in Afghanistan.
Her Excellency, thank you very much for being with us on this forum. I have one observation and one question. Observation is this, that we have noticed because we are in communication with a lot of people here in Pakistan, that Canadian embassy, they are doing discrimination for giving the student visas for Canada as compared to India. This is the observation. I would like to have your comments on that. And the second question is that when you think that you are going to lift the negative travel advisory to Pakistan, because now you see that Alhamdulillah, Pakistan is a very safe place, and all people are coming from the rest of the world. So these are my two observations and questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the questions. I'm actually very glad to address the what seems to be a persistent, but we firmly believe is an inaccurate understanding that there is discriminatory treatment of Pakistanis in the visa process. That is not the case. Every application is considered on its own merit based on the information that is received in the applicant's file. I would maybe just add a few, frankly, personal observations on my side. Since over the course of my 3 years here, I have dealt and heard from people who are concerned with visas on a daily basis. First and foremost, I think it's important to understand that the number of visas that are applied for from Pakistan is extraordinary. In a pre-COVID environment, I believe it was something in the range of about 3,000 a week. Those are being dealt with by our colleagues in the Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Department, IRCC Canada, uniquely. It's a mandate that is held by IRCC, and they are the only ones that can take decisions. They advise me that there is a significant incidence in the visa applications of incorrect information, ranging from people who have made mistakes through to absolute and outright fraud. This creates challenges in processing because when you have that type of volume of applications, it takes some time to go through them all. So there are certain delays. With respect to students, the Canadian government wants more students from Pakistan to go to Canada. There is no question. It is an objective. It's one of my performance indicators for the delivery of the mandate of my High Commission. And we are constantly working to engage with students who are qualified to go to Canada and encourage them. Like, sir, our former speaker, your son going to York University. It's a great school. The challenge that we have is that, again, there is a high incidence of incomplete and incorrect information. I won't make a value on the type of information that goes into applications. For that reason, Canada established a program which is available to a number of countries around the world. Pakistan is now one, called the Student Direct Stream. And in the Student Direct Stream, there is an expedited processing for those students that are accepted to a qualified university, and the list of universities is on the website, that have the means to show financial support while they're in Canada, which requires the establishment of a guaranteed investment certificate in a Canadian bank that can only be drawn down by the student who will be studying. And then there's a language requirement and so forth. We are strongly encouraging students going to Canada to apply through the SDS stream, the Student Direct Stream. Even though the last 2 years of COVID have been distorting our statistics, because of course it's been very difficult to travel, and many foreign students were not going to overseas, or students going overseas to become foreign students. What we've seen in the SDS applications is that the acceptance rate for SDS is equivalent to that of the other SDS countries, like India, Iran, Vietnam, Philippines, and I think I've forgotten one. In any event, the SDS stream is the way to go. So if any of you know of students that wish to go to Canada or applying, we're trying to get the word out, apply through the SDS stream. That's the way to be able to ensure that your application will be considered and ideally, if all the conditions are met, then approved. I'm just having a momentary seniors moment. I know there was an important part of the second question, but I got off on a tangent on visas.
The negative travel advisory.
Travel advisory. Yes. So that one too, I'm very sorry, I'm going to have to debunk. There was an unfortunate flurry of media attention to the Canadian travel advisory about a month ago, which showed that it had been updated and perhaps things had changed, when in fact the only thing that was updated on it was a global travel advisory related to COVID, which was the same for every country around the world. Canada's travel advisories are evidence-based. We put them out based on a series of objective criteria that relate to incidents of violence, criminality, terrorism risk, health-related factors. I mean, it's really a multifaceted advisory. Pakistan has an overall advisory of exercise caution, which is akin to the overall advisory for the vast majority of countries in the world, including countries in Europe. It's a good thing. It means that, frankly, from many in the insurance country, that is the trigger that they look for to indicate that a country is appropriate for travel. Although I'm sure that many of you, I think objectively you would agree to me, what we have done with the Pakistan travel advice is, in order to achieve this level of exercise caution as the overall advisory, is that we have been very precise with respect to different parts of the country we do not believe it is appropriate to travel. So the overall advisory for Pakistan is this exercise caution, which Canada has a 4-tier system. Basically, Canada being like the number one. The second is exercise caution. The third one is essential travel only. And the fourth one is do not travel. So during my tenure here, we have moved Pakistan from essential travel only to the travel as you will, but exercise caution category. But Balochistan, the newly merged districts, There's a couple of other areas as well in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are still in the either essential travel only or do not travel. And given, I believe, I hope many of you would agree with me, but given some of the recent incidents that we've seen in Balochistan in particular, the level of security in the newly merged districts, this is not a place that we are looking for business travelers or tourists and others to go to. That said, the northern areas, Punjab, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa districts on the way to the northern areas, Abbottabad, Mansehra, Naran, and these are all areas that are clear for travel. I have traveled throughout these areas on my own, in my own car, and encourage Canadians to do the same. But it is very clear that there are still some quite challenging areas in Pakistan, and we have to provide the information that allows Canadians to make informed choices.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very good explanation to the 2 points asked by my colleague. But if I may, Madam High Commissioner, add to it, let me tell you, there is a preference by the students in Pakistan to go to Canada. I gave you the preference of, the preference by my son as well. Even though the distance stands in the way, there is a feeling that Canada is better than other, countries in the West where they would go and get educated. Plus the fact that diaspora that is creating in a place called Mississauga near Toronto, it's a huge population there, and everybody has somebody or the other as relative or a friend there. So one of the reasons that the students prefer to go to Canada is the ease of, going and being with the families there. Plus the fact there is a preference after 9/11, Canada is a better place to go and study. If at all other countries, perhaps might be Australia. As far as the travel advisory is concerned, being on the board of many bilateral business forums, the travel advisory by a country depends, the business of that country in Pakistan depends upon the travel advisory. I understand the constraints that you all face in leveling your travel advisory, but please understand Pakistan is much different what it was 3, 4, 5, 8 years ago. So please keep that in mind. There are a lot of people who want to travel to Canada, they want to do business, and there are big opportunities that will come in. I would now go for the next person who might want to put up a question to the High Commissioner.
This is about the current hot topic of Ukraine, the confrontation at Ukraine. With the collapse of, with the end of the Cold War and collapse of the USSR, there may not have been any justification for continuation of NATO. However, not only NATO continued, but also encroached upon the former Warsaw Pact countries. Now, there is confrontation in Ukraine, and there is a possibility that the Western installed government in Ukraine may be requesting for membership of NATO. That would not be acceptable to the US, to Russia, because there is a possibility after acceptance of NATO request by Ukraine, missiles could be installed right at the border of Russia. All that Russia is saying is that give us a guarantee that NATO will not get Ukraine as a member, at least for maybe for another 50 years or 30 years. So what prevents the Western powers to encroach and provoke the Russian government to give this, to ask their request for not giving membership to Ukraine? As far as the sovereignty of Ukraine is concerned, may I politely and humbly ask, where was the sovereignty of Iraq, which was invaded by the USA without provocation? Thank you very much, Excellency.
Well, thank you very much for the statement and I believe question as well. I have a different perspective, of course. It is important that we all have an opportunity to speak about our perspectives, and frankly, the more dialogue there is, the less opportunity there would be for outright conflict. NATO, as an institution, is governed by and established through the Washington Treaty, which has as one of its, I think it's actually Article 2, the principle of like-minded nations who adhere to democratic principles. NATO is an organization and an alliance of like-minded countries who have joined together for mutual defense. It is not directed at any particular bloc. It is not an offensive or expeditionary organization. It is designed to protect its member states. So in the aftermath of the end of the Cold War and the breakup of the Soviet Union, there were a number of nations that demonstrated their commitment to these principles and that sought to join NATO, and NATO enlarged to include them. NATO had an ongoing and active dialogue with Russia and would still, should Russia be interested in participating in it. We have partnership agreements with many countries. We collectively as the Alliance has an ongoing and active partnership with Pakistan, including in military education. Russia's choice to pursue its, how at the moment I'm feeling, I need to choose my language carefully because of course it is a very sensitive time, but Russia's choice to invade its neighbor, its sovereign country, Ukraine, is demonstrative, frankly, of the importance of like-minded countries getting together to exercise their collective defense. Ukraine was not on a membership track for NATO. It was in an active partnerships. There are many different countries which have these partnerships with NATO. And for Russia to feel threatened speaks more about Russia's perception of its own actions than, frankly, NATO's. That is our view. There are many different views in this respect. But I believe it is very important that we all underline the importance under international law and the behaviors of states to be good international citizens, to respect territorial integrity and sovereignty, and to engage in dialogue where there are disputes. With respect to Iraq, and I would just make note of, Canada can only be responsible for its own actions, and we chose deliberately with the government of Prime Minister Chrétien at the time not to participate in the invasion of Iraq in 2003 because we did not believe that the international law supported it at that moment. So it's, the world is a very challenging and dangerous place. Every country has to make its own decisions with respect to engagement and protect its own interests, but I would hope that Pakistan, which has a stated approach of adherence to and importance of a rules-based multilateral order, would continue to work within it, as does Canada. These are two, certainly areas that Canada and Pakistan feel very alike on and strongly about.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for your answer. At the moment, we are a little worried for our Prime Minister who has gone there, first ever to visit after decades. He only arrived last night and there's a meeting scheduled for today. And we only hope that something good turns out. Like you said, there are challenging times. The regional politics is changing, the regional dimension is changing, and we only hope for the best, living in a difficult world.
Before we request the chairman for our concluding remarks, may I very briefly introduce him to the present people, and of course Her Excellency has, we had sent her brief to the Excellency, but however I may tell you that we are very lucky to have our chairman whose articles printed in many newspapers every week, syndicated weekly columns in 6 countries in 15 newspapers, magazines in Pakistan include English Regular, Daily Times, Balochistan Express, Messenger, the Regional Times, the Frontier Star and South Asian Monitor in Malaysia, and then frequently The Nation, Business Recorder, Dawn, The News, Pakistan Observers, Pakistan Today, and Express Tribune, and Urdu dailies regularly in Express Awsaf, Taqat, Khabrein, Intikhab, Ittihad, Daily Jang, Nawai Waqt, etc., etc. He's author of books of 2 books, Escape from the Oblivion, and then Blood Over Different Shades of Greens. And he regularly appears on TV on different talk shows. But in addition to all this, he is the chairman of Pathfinder Group, which has got 12,000 employees in 50 cities in towns in Pakistan, Pathfinder Group includes Security Services Division, Security Management Services, Wakenhart Pakistan Limited, SMS Electronic Safety Services, Research and Collection Services. He is also the chief editor of Defense Weekly, and Financial Services and Technological Division, Virtual Remittance Gateway. He owns this facility, Virtual Remittance Gateway, and Pathfinder Private Limited, iPath, etc. He primarily is an Army officer, graduate from Pakistan Military Academy, and I recall 55 years back when I joined as a cadet, he was a senior under officer over us over there. He is the founding member of World Economic Forum at Switzerland, former director of Bank Al-Falah. He remained there for 16 years, he was director. He has been the chairman of K Electric, director East West Institute, USA, director of the year 2016, foundation member, of course, I've told you about World Economic Forum, Switzerland, formerly Global Agenda Council, GAC, for counter-terrorism, now anti-corruption and transparency, member of World Economic Forum. He hosts Pakistan breakfast every year at World Economic Forum, and many of us have enjoyed their breakfast in Switzerland. All Pakistan Security Agencies Association. He is the senior member of Pakistan Editors Council, CPEC projects, regular speaker at National Defense University of Pakistan, PF War College, and Naval War College, Lahore. International think tanks, he is vice president and member, executive committee of Council Relations, of course, KCFR, and vice chairman of board of management, Quaid-e-Azam House Museum. There's a list further, which we had sent it to you at the start of the yesterday. And I may not continue further, but may I now request our chairman for his concluding remarks.
Thank you, Commodore Sadeed. I think the most important part of it is that we were colleagues together 57 years ago as cadets together in PMA Kakul. I think, Excellency, first of all, let me thank you, for having given us a good discourse, a good presentation on things as they are, particularly between Pakistan and Canada, and Canadian perspective about Pakistan and what is happening in the world today. There are some things we cannot change. We cannot change our neighbors. We live in a very dangerous neighborhood, right? And we have problems, right? We have a disputed problem about Jammu and Kashmir. We have, we had till very recently a problem because of the war in Afghanistan, which is continuing in a different fashion now, obviously. But, because we are primarily, because of the Shia-Sunni divide and the problems between the Arab countries and Iran, we are also walking a tightrope there. So all in all, we have been walking a tightrope all along, whether it's regional tightrope, whether it's an international tightrope. We've been doing that, and what you see is a continuation of that, because while we were an essential part of the shield against communism, and if you remember, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey became part of Baghdad Pact, became CENTO ultimately, and of course when that broke up, stayed part of the regional cooperation development, which ultimately became the Economic Cooperation Organization. So, Excellency, we are a member of the, actually, and if you look at, when Commodore Malik has talked about the World Economic Forum, and where we are, and actually the World Economic Forum sets trends, precedents, which actually happen in the world maybe 2-3 years after their ascent. One of the things was that they included as part of South Asia. We were all part of South Asia till, everybody ganged up against us for a few years. Now the things are changing, but because of that, we felt part of South Asia and not a part of South Asia. We are a part of the Middle East and not a part of the Middle East, right? So ultimately, we because of the North-South corridor, people talk about the China-Pakistan economic corridor. They forget the North-South corridor, which comes through the Central Asian states to Pakistan, right, and which ends in Gwadar. The North-South corridor and the East-West corridor, which is the old RCD highway, which was, from, in fact, actually as we speak, 2 trains have gone from Pakistan right up to Istanbul, and actually, it's actually happening. So we are part of 4 corridors: the MENA, Middle East, North Africa, China-Pakistan economic corridor, North-South corridor, and we are part of the RCD. Now, the point is, we need to have a balanced relationship with everybody. We just cannot afford sides anymore. We cannot afford to be on, blindly, like we went in, and I think we made a mistake. We could have, been more balanced in the Afghan war, but I think we made a mistake, and for that mistake, we are suffering and will continue to suffer in the future, because this war on terrorism is not going to, whatever the Taliban hierarchy may think of Pakistan and may have a good side of Pakistan, the people down below are not going to listen. They're going to come across, because some of them really went from here to join the fighting there. So they are not going to be under control of the Taliban hierarchy. So I think people need to understand our situation. You did speak about areas which are non-accessible, right? And because, Excellency, those are non-accessible because of the problems that occurred there. We had a regular war. Swat was taken over by the Taliban, Tehrik-e-Taliban. Fatah was taken over by the Tehrik-e-Taliban. The Pakistan Army fought a magnificent war to get rid of the occupying Taliban from there and got them out, restored peace in that area, and actually, and integrated Fatah and Swat into Pakistan proper. And obviously, people are sensitive to people going there, not only for any other reason, but for security reason. But may I remind you, Excellency, you put us to these standards, but you don't hold India to those standards. Can you go and visit Jammu and Kashmir? Can you go and visit Assam? Can you go and visit the Seven Sisters, Nagaland, Mizoram, Manipur, Bodoland, etc.? You cannot, because all permissions, etc., and that is starting right from the right for last 70 years. It's not from yesterday or day for yesterday. So I think people have to see things as they are and really be practical about the things. I think we, in the end, we value our relationship with Canada. You mentioned about Barrick Gold, obviously Reko Diq, with the second largest copper and gold reserve in the world. If once the Reko Diq problem is solved, right? Obviously, we would love to have mining interests from Canada come into Pakistan, exploit because that is our strength. That is the raw material we have. Second largest copper and gold reserve in the world, right? And obviously, we required Canadian investment, Canadian technology, and we are very lucky. Of course, Mr. Kalim Farooqui has talked about Canada and his son going to Canada. The previous destination of choice was UK. Then it became USA. And then after 2002, the destination of choice became Canada. And a lot of, there's a huge Pakistani diaspora in Canada. And we do look forward to a connection. We look forward to more interchanges. We look forward to more interaction with your think tanks. We need to talk to each other. We need to dispel the doubts with each other. So, Excellency, please accept, my heartiest gratitude for coming to us and speaking like that. And we look forward to further interaction with you. We look forward to your actual visit to Karachi, when we like to host you to this thing where we like to, have the same address at more personal address. So I thank you And I thank all the participants for being with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And I would like to thank Her Excellency once again and all the distinguished participants. And before I take the permission to conclude, may I request...
Just one comment, Malik Saab, if you allow me, just one comment to
Yes,
High
sir.
Commissioner, if you will.
Yes.
Madam, you have a very active and a well-known Honorary Consul General in Karachi called Mr. Bahram Awari. I spoke to him yesterday, but he happened to be in Islamabad. Otherwise, he would have joined. He's under pressure for visas, which was actually mentioned by one of my colleagues here. But he's smart. He leaves everything to the High Commission in Islamabad. So please do take a look when the applications come to you, because like what our chairman said, there's a big diaspora in Canada. And for the businessmen, if it's not for the locals there, at least for the immigrants from Pakistan who's gone there, they look forward to products coming in from Pakistan. So there is a big opportunity for business as well. So, and getting the visa is one hurdle that needs to be overcome. So please take a look at it. Bahram has been a very good friend. He is a family friend of ours. He knows everybody in Karachi. You have got the right choice for your, the Honorary Consul General. But he's smart enough. He doesn't take a decision. He just sends it over to the High Commission in Islam. That is what my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
May
very
I
much. If I
just
could-
add something on for our guest? Prime Minister Trudeau visited India and he made a comment about Kashmir, and he was then outcasted there. So it isn't that Canada hasn't spoken about it. I just wanted to make a point on behalf of our guest here.
If I may respond very quickly, and I know we're past a little bit of time, but thank you all for the opportunity to be here. Maybe just one or two, I guess, points for clarification. The one is, I think if you look at Canada's travel advice for India, it is at the moment at the same level as Canada's travel advice for Pakistan. They are very similar. In both cases, they are at the exercise caution, which is a reasonable advice, a judgment to make. And as I said, as much of the world is exactly there, with specific areas. In fact, sir, with the specific areas that you identified are also called out in the India one, just as specific areas are called out in Pakistan. So it is, we do look at these things objectively and based on the information available to us, but it's something which is constantly under review. And if I may just say on visas, I just wanted to dispel sort of, if anything is left as the impression that I might have the ability to make decisions on visas, because unfortunately in some respects, maybe fortunately in others, for me, I have no role in the visa process. It is something under Canadian law, which is held by Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada. The decisions are taken by the responsible visa officers wherever they are in the world that is looking at applications. Applications are assessed online in the order in which they are received on a global basis, which is one of the ways that Canada is trying to keep up. But we are very aware of the challenges, and we're looking at some strategic communications around trying, frankly, to give people the information they need in order to apply in such a way that it allows the visa officer to consider their application positively. It's really important to get all the information into the application, because literally you can't guarantee that the person reviewing the application has any specific knowledge about Pakistan or Iran, Philippines, India, wherever else the applications happen to be coming from. These are officers who are experts in the application process. So that's really important. But I agree completely with all of you that I would like to see the exchanges, the people-to-people, family reunification, business engagements, students in particular, increase. And that is a goal of the High Commission, and we are trying to make that happen. So thank you so much for the ability to speak to you today.
Thank you very much, Your
you.
Excellency.
Thank you.
Especially so that you have taken over and above time from scheduled period. Thank you very much.